Good evening. I'll have the clerk please call the roll.
Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
Treasurer Horning?
Here.
Clerk Chopu? Here. Trustee Collier?
Here.
Trustee Germain?
Here.
Trustee Harper?
Here.
Trustee Petrucci? Here.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval or agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Harper. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Call to the public. Nobody here this evening for the call of the public. And number 6 is approval of our consent agenda.
So move.
Motion by Trustee Kalani, support by Trustee Germain. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our one pending and new business tonight is a resolution for the fire millage. I'd like to turn this over to either Joe or Glenn. And we did meet yesterday with Mike Homier to come up with a recommendation.
Go ahead, Joe, you're the...
You want to go ahead and start?
No.
You want me to start?
Go ahead. You're...
Well, we got an email from our attorneys, and there are some legal issues that we have to contend with because we're coming in for the fire millage a year before it actually matured. So because of that, we have some issues that we have to deal with, and so he made 4 recommendations. We went through them on Monday, and the committee decided that to go with recommendation number 2, which is a little bit easier to understand, as well as better, it's a benefit for the fire department as well. So with that, just want to mention that the millage has not been increased in several years. I believe the last millage increase was in 2002, and it was again renewed in 2007. And at that time, in 2002, I believe our millage was at 1.97, and because of Headley, it has now dropped down to below 1.88, I believe.
It's 1.81.
1.89?
81.
So that being said, we're asking for a 0.24 increase, which is less than 1/4%. That'll bring us up to 2.06. And I believe it's going to be down to 1.97 in a year.
In 5 years.
5 years? So we'll be right back in 5 years where we were in 2002. So with that being said, it's about, I would say, and for the average homeowner, an increase of $35 to $50 a year. So.
Any questions from the board? Adam's here this evening. If anybody has a question, Susan's here. Have any questions?
I have a question. Why were options 1 and 3 rejected, other than the fact that 2 is
A
easier?
little bit more confusing to understand, and we didn't want to confuse the voters in the booth. You know, you can't sit there and explain to them what's going on. You can only put it in language, legal language for it. And if you were to read that, it's a little bit, it's not as clear.
But in terms of the financial impact to the fire authority, are all 3 options comparable?
Are all 4 options comfortable? I believe they were.
No.
No, three of the 4 were.
Could you come to the mic, please?
Yes. 3 of the 4.
State your name and everything for the record.
Adam Carroll, Fire Chief with the Fire Department. 3 of the 4, in general, were comparable, sort of. This is complicated to say. If we go through them, there was an option where it was the 2.06, but not effective until 22. The challenge with that is from the time it was approved by the voters, it would be rolled back twice before it was ever collected. And in addition to that, the 2.06 number was arrived at based on starting in 21. Waiting to 22 would have, for projection purposes, caused that 2.06 to actually be a little higher because it would have been 1 more year on the current 1.81. the number 3, I think that we were talking about, the largest challenge with that, while technically it would have been comparable in total dollars, really literally put 2 millage proposal questions on the same ballot in front of the voters. And that's just messy. You know, it's generally speaking, folks are going to want to pick one over the other, not both. And then the other option was
And the 2 would have been the renewal of the existing.
renewal of the existing and then doing, right. And it's, you know, part of it is a timing issue. We're also a little sensitive to obviously the fact that there are other millages, not only in this current go-round, but in the next 2 years. Everything from the road millage to other things that we're trying to be, to some degree, equally sensitive to, but make sure we accomplish what we need to for the fire.
And is it true that the option that was recommended doesn't require us to have another fire millage in 2 years?
It is true. It would not
That's a
require that.
benefit.
Yep.
And I think the goal was to have those come due during a presidential election. That was that's why this is not a 10-year, this is a 5-year, and we would probably, whoever the next board is, whoever's sitting here, the goal was to have that during a presidential election year.
Typically, that's when we do that, every presidential election.
And another question I have, not that I'm opposed to the option that's been recommended, but more of a procedural question, does the Tyrone Township or Deerfield have to, not Tyrone, does Deerfield have to also approve the language before it goes to the county, or is it solely our
No, this is-
responsibility?
No.
Solely Heartland's, yeah, it's solely a Heartland millage. The current way the fire department is funded is each municipality contributes that % share. How each municipality comes up with their share is up to each township. In Heartland Township, historically, traditionally, and I think the best way is via millage. In Deerfield Township, it's done by special assessment. That worked for them at time and seems to be still working for them now. When we converted what they collect under their SAD to a average millage rate, they're at about a 2.0. So it's really neck and neck.
It's almost the
So,
same.
yeah, they're collecting the millage-wise, right, dollar to dollar, they're collecting about the same rate, just via a different vehicle.
Yeah, man, it's almost the same, it's just collected a different way.
How it's applied is certainly, yeah, very different, yeah. It's a SAD, well, like any SAD, it's a flat rate across all the users.
Homebuyer writes in here, new additional millage. Not, is that right, Kathy? By saying new additional?
Yes.
Why isn't a new millage, just plain new a millage versus what's the additional language? Because that is kind of confusing because it would suggest that it's a new additional millage in addition to what is already being charged, and you're not.
So I would love to be able to drop that word if possible, because I agree with you 100%. I think what he was referencing was that the current 181 actually doesn't expire for another year. So the concept would be when the 2.06 passes, they would vacate the township board would vacate the last year. Now, I don't know if that's the reason that the additional needs to be tacked in there or not.
It's going to cause a problem, I think, with some voters, because it's what I picked up on right away when I read it.
But we're
If I'm
not
reading this as a
vacating.
ballot proposal, that's what I'm wondering.
Under this proposal, we would vacate it, not this.
Yeah, but the voter doesn't know that.
That's why it's in there.
That's why it's in there.
It would certainly be a huge part of our publicity of it, is explaining that question as best we can to as many as we can, but yeah. And honestly, I think it may be a question for Mr. Homier of,
Yeah,
is that the
I
reason?
should've
If not, then
asked
let's
him.
drop it.
Well, we've got to,
I think Susan worked with them on the language, didn't you, Susan?
I did, but I took all of his advice.
Right,
That's what we pay him for.
right.
I'm just saying from a marketing standpoint, you're going to have to do a real good marketing, because if I'm, most people are going to adopt, they usually support public services like fire, so I'm not as it shouldn't be that big of a concern. But I think we need to state for the record here, that first of all, there's an election coming up, and we might not be, some of us may not be sitting here at the time that this gets adopted or is concerned, back in November. That being said, we should really have someone explain what is a new additional millage, and that this board intends to vacate, if this is passed, that we intend to vacate the last year of the current millage, so that people aren't, for lack of a better word, double taxed.
Correct.
Because that's what that would carry for those who read this carefully. They're thinking, wait a minute, why is this a new additional millage versus a new millage? And what does that mean? Are you adding two on top of the one, so to speak?
Yeah, it would certainly be a huge key in the marketing piece and explaining it as best we can to everybody.
And that's why I'm saying it so loud over here, so the
Yeah.
news behind you
Well, and
understands
I think
why
even
we're
before
talking
that,
about it.
it's worth a follow-up question to Mr. Homier to say, can we drop the additional word? Or is that the reason that it's there, right? Are we required to have that
I
word there?
suspect that's the reason why it's there, because
Okay,
there is an existing millage in place.
so, here, pass that down.
He's going to be on the phone in a minute.
He already
Okay.
texted me.
Is he watching?
He's watching it right now.
Because it's going to be vacated.
Well, but we haven't taken that action. You're right.
If
I
we
just-
vote this resolution.
If we adopt this resolution, we're not vacating the new one right now, are we?
No, but we're
Vacated
making a statement
2021.
about it, though.
Okay,
And that was part of the discussion, is to adopt a resolution to make that statement.
for purposes of the public, you really can't, take a text. I just want to
Well,
carefully,
he's going to be on our
he's going to be
meeting.
on, but I think you could probably say what he said, so it's in the record.
So our attorney is watching this. I could put him on the telephone if you want.
No, I mean, I think you're fair. You could, just careful what,
He stated, it's a new millage that will replace the current millage.
Bill, I don't know if the people can understand you at home, I'm sorry to say that.
I'm doing the best I can. It's a new millage that will replace the current millage, and the last year is intended to be vacated. That's what he just texted me.
And so the language reads, new additional millage is to reflect the fact that there's an existing millage in place that will be vacated at such time this gets approved.
Right.
And that the press should put that in the notice to the public.
I don't think that's any different than when the school did their sinking fund.
Right.
Yeah, probably not.
It was the same language. It sounded like an increase, but they
They told
publicized
everybody it
as
wasn't.
a no increase type thing.
I'm not advocating one way or the other for the fire millage, because we can't do that as a board. I'm just making sure we clarify the language for people to understand what the process is going to be.
And if the word additional is required in there, we can certainly
That's
keep
the
it there.
reason why it's there.
And here, I just got another one from our attorney. It says you cannot drop the new.
No, we're not
Well, we
saying
don't want to
new.
drop new.
The
We're talking just
additional,
drop
the word
additional.
additional.
Okay.
That was the language that threw me. New millage is fine. It
Yep.
was the additional language that, as a taxpayer reading this, my concern would be, are they,
Additional.
additional means I'm getting taxed again, and I'm already still being taxed. It'd be like us passing a road millage while we still have the road millage in place, and people going, wait a minute, you have a road millage in place, or something to that effect, you know what I mean? So,
Okay, other questions for anybody at our panelists today?
I'll move the resolution to ask the voters to authorize new additional millage in the amount not to exceed 2.06 mills for a period of 5 years from 2021 through 2025 inclusive, to provide funds for operating, equipping, constructing, and purchasing for Heartland Deerfield Fire Authority or for any other purposes authorized by law for fire service purposes.
Support.
A motion by trustee Harper, second by trustee Petrucci. Any questions? Have a clerk please call the roll.
Clerk Chopu, yes. Treasurer Horning?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes.
Trustee Collier?
yes.
Supervisor Fountain?
Yes.
Trustee Germain?
Yes.
Thank you. And we'll go into board reports. We'll start with Clerk Shofu.
Just an update on.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Susan.
a quick update on absentee ballots, and we've sent out over almost 3,000 right now. We've got probably about 1,600 back. We're still getting applications in daily, probably about 30, 40 a day. So it's still picking up. We are starting to have a issue with election workers at the precincts. There have been certain people that are backing out a little bit later than we had anticipated, and if anybody's out there interested in being an election worker on August 4th, just give us a call down at the Township Hall, and we can get you set up with some training. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Treasurer Horning?
Tax bills went out, and we had the note on the back, if you guys read yours. And the people have been great about putting them in the drop box and putting in an envelope for us, and we're mailing out the receipts as we put them in the register. We're getting 50 or 60 payments a day. We're making appointments. If people need to pay cash, they're calling us up, and we're meeting them at the door and giving them a receipt, so all is smooth.
You can also go to local banks.
They only can go to the First National Bank in Heartland. Even if they don't have an account there, they can go pay their tax bill there.
Thank you. Trustee Kalani?
I have nothing to report.
Trustee Germain?
I have nothing tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Harper?
No report.
Trustee Petrucci?
I don't have a report tonight.
I have really no report other than still having one-on-ones with the staff every week. Things are going very well right now. We have a meeting tomorrow, and we will could be phasing in our next opening process here at the hall. And we'll have that discussion tomorrow. So all is well. So if there are no other questions, we'll take a brief recess, and we're going to go into closed session this evening. Take
Are
a
we
brief
just staying
recess.
here, or are we
We
going
have to
in?
go in there for the
We-
phone.
Did you say closed session?
Yes.
We need to make a motion.
We can do that when we get over there.
Oh,